Chair Cruz, you have quorum and you can get started whenever you're ready.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's get started. Good morning. Welcome to the Maricopa Regional Continuum of Care Committee meeting. For those around the table, please turn on your microphone when speaking. For those participating via Zoom, please state your name when making a comment or asking a question and mute when you are not speaking. The MAG public comment process allows members of the public to comment on items on today's agenda or on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction. If you would like to comment at today's meeting, please fill out a white request to speak card located on the information table and give it to MAG staff. If you are in the audience today, please remember to sign in at the information table. If you parked in the garage, parking validators are available on the information table. If you purchase a transit ticket to come to the meeting, please see staff for a ticket. Hearing assisted devices are available from MAG staff. I do want to take a quick second of personal privilege to say I apologize that I'm not with you all in person. I'm recovering from just the medical situation yesterday, and just wanted to say that because I said, as long as I'm in Maricopa County, I will always be in person at the meeting. But those that care for me said otherwise. They said, no, you will keep your behind at home today. So all that being said, we will now ask Haley to proceed with a roll call. Please indicate you are here and your organization after Haley calls your name.
Thank you. Jeremy, can we also get subtitles on there? Closed captioning. Thank you. Dawn Bogart.
Here.
Vanessa Cartho. Allison Cook Davis. Aaron Cowan-Haig. Jessica Cruz.
Sherelle Chancellor, and for proxy for Jessica Cruz.
Thank you. Kathy Dinolfi.
Present. Kathy Dinolfi and Newly.
Nicole Gibson. Anne Marie Johnston.
Anne Marie Johnston with Community Bridges here.
Christina Lopez.
Christina Lopez here for Native American Connections.
Marcy McFarland.
Janet Flores, proxy for Marcy McFarland, Home Inc.
Thank you. Jim McPherson.
Morning, everyone. Jim McPherson with the Phoenix Community Alliance Social and Housing Advancement Committee.
Jennifer Page.
Good morning, Jennifer Page from Mercy Care.
Gerardo Pena.
Hi, good morning. Gerardo Pena with Chicanos por la Casa.
Aaron Rain.
Aaron Rain here, City of Mesa.
Ty Rosensteel.
Good morning. This is Ty Rosensteel from Solari representing HMIS and 211 Arizona.
Patricia Scott Lopez.
Patricia Scott Lopez, Housing Management Specialist, Arizona Complete Health here.
Sarah Sims.
Present.
Laura Scott Nicky.
Kimberly Thompson, proxy for Laura Scott Nicky, the Salvation Army Southwest Division.
Thank you. Nathan Smith. Michelle Stokes.
Good morning, Michelle Stokes, Behold Charities.
Thank you. Christopher Wallace.
Christopher Wallace present, Phoenix VA.
Emily Walsh.
Here with Maricopa County.
Chair Richard Cruz.
Present, Richard Cruz, Human Services Campus.
Did I miss anyone? Awesome. Nice big meeting today. Back to you, Chair Cruz.
Awesome. The next item on the agenda is a call to the audience. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under the Continuum of Care Committee that are not on the agenda or that are on the agenda for discussion and not for action. 15 minutes are provided for the call to the audience agenda item unless the committee requests an exception to this limit. MAG staff, were there any comments received or anyone who has joined the call to offer comments?
There were no public comments received or members of the audience wishing to speak at this time.
Okay, thank you. We will now move on to the next agenda item. The consent agendas will approve multiple items at the same time. Committee members can always ask for an agenda item to be pulled off the consent agenda to be heard during the meeting, at which time staff can provide additional information, give a presentation, and answer any questions. Does any member of the committee have questions or comments on the consent agenda? Hearing none, could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Awesome. It is moved by Jim. Do we have a second?
This is Kathy. I'll second.
Okay, it's been properly moved in second. Is there discussion on the motion? Hearing none for committee members in the room, we will do a voice vote. Those in favor in the room, please say yay.
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 There we go. Those opposed say nay. Hearing none for members joining remotely, I will ask Haley to proceed with a roll call vote. Please indicate clearly how you vote, stating yay or nay after your name is called. Haley.
Don Bogart,
Yay.
Jessica Cruz,
Yay.
Kathy Denolfi. Or
Yay.
proxy. Sorry, Sherelle. Anne Marie Johnston,
Yay.
Christina Lopez.
Yay.
Marcy McFarland or proxy.
Yay.
Jim McPherson,
Aye.
Jennifer Page.
I'll abstain.
Thank you. Gerardo Pena,
Yay.
Aaron Rain,
Yay.
Ty Rosensteel,
Yay.
Patricia Scott Lopez,
Yay.
Sarah Sims,
Yay.
Laura Scott Nicky or proxy,
Yay.
Michelle Stokes,
Yay.
Christopher Wallace,
Yay.
Emily Walsh,
Yay.
and Chair Cruz.
Yay.
Did I miss anyone? Great, the motion passes. Back to you, Chair.
Awesome. Okay. So we will now move on to the written updates. Written updates are included in the packet. Does anyone have any questions or discussion about the update memo? Welcoming those that came in. Okay. We will move to the next agenda item.
Oh, I'm
Remember,
sorry, Chair. One more
Mhm.
moment.
Yes.
Is Joan Service on? She was going to give a legislative update per your.
Okay. Yeah, is Joan in the building?
I am. I'm here.
Congratulations, future director Service.
Thank you all. Appreciate that.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm also joined, I believe that the Joanna that's down on my screen is hopefully Joanna Carr. She will be the interim executive director of the Arizona Housing Coalition. So I have 3 things to chat with y'all about, but I want to be sensitive to time, so someone get the hook out if I'm taking too long. The first is obviously I wanted to share with you all the 2023 Arizona Housing Coalition legislative priorities. So first, big surprise, we are going to be advocating for the Arizona Housing Trust Fund to be not restored, because we know that funding mechanism really needs to be invigorated. And the good thing is, like, our lawmakers agree with us, right? We had a $60 million investment last legislative session. And if anybody was watching the State of the State, with my future boss speaking, she called, or will be including in her budget, which will be released on Friday, a $150 million investment towards the Housing Trust Fund. So hooray, some of our 2023 Housing Coalition legislative priorities are kind of moving forward, with us and with our help, obviously, and sometimes obviously our lawmakers and elected officials are just moving forward and agree with us. So that's all exciting news. Now we were actually calling for a $200 million one-time investment. So 150 million, 200 million. I'm not going to complain. Ultimately, what we will be exploring this legislative session is how do we go about having an ongoing sustainable funding source. These one-time investments, while amazing, we really need to make sure that there's an ongoing sustainable investment. And for those who are unfamiliar with that, it's a state resource. It's actually one of the few state resources dedicated towards addressing housing. It's helped finance affordable housing units, assisted rural families with housing and stability and home ownership, and it also supports some homeless prevention programs. Speaking of homeless prevention programs, our second legislative priorities is to increase the Department of Economic Security's coordinated homeless line item. Hopefully y'all are familiar with that. It has received rather static funding over the years, but obviously we know that not only is housing crisis untenable, but we need to make sure that that fund is one of the few funding sources that addresses the operations side. We talk a lot about with the housing and capital side, the building, but we need to really make sure that we're investing in ensuring a highly trained workforce, especially making sure that we have folks, we don't lose any case managers and outreach workers because this is a highly relational field when it comes to outreach and moving folks from streets and into housing. So we need to really make sure that that coordinated homeless line item receives a robust increase. Some of that coordinated homeless line item receives funding from lottery funds. It's about $1 million, as well as some general fund dollars and federal TANF funds. We're exploring what other funding mechanisms or what other lottery games can go towards that. So that's our second legislative priority. Our third legislative priority is teacherages. Y'all might recall us talking about this last legislative session, but currently the Arizona statute allows rural school districts to allocate funds and property towards developing, producing, and maintaining housing options for their staff. We want to expand this so that it's an option for both urban and suburban areas, make it statewide. And then I'll keep going real quick. One of our legislative priorities is to reconvene the State Interagency Council on Housing and Homelessness. Guess what? My new boss usurped me and basically she made that happen through executive order. So again, congratulations and that one less activity on the coalition's job jar. So that's exciting. Folks are already asking who's going to be a part of that. TBD is all I'll say, but I do know that both myself in the new role at the Department of Housing and one of my colleagues, Angie Rogers, formerly with the Food Bank Association, now the director of DES, she and I will be co-chairing that commission. And then lastly, we have two other things, but we also recognize that this is kind of more of an education long game. Good policy begins with education, right? So we will, as a result of the work that I sat on the Housing Supply Study Committee, we won't be taking a lead role. The Housing Coalition won't be taking a lead role, but we will be echoing and really supporting legislation that's introduced that encourages zoning changes to facilitate more affordable housing development. So what that could look like is, really elevating zoning changes that increases ADUs and single room occupancies, that allows for higher density to, again, create more affordable housing, that looks at reducing parking minimums and allowing for more affordable housing development on residential lots. We also want to allow local governments to dedicate, obviously, a percentage of existing revenues from specific districts, basically tax increment financing or opportunity zones. It's another word that's used at the federal government level. So really want to ensure that local governments have the tools and the tricks in their bag to really encourage more affordable housing, but also let it be a local conversation. And then lastly, y'all have been excellent champions with us around the state low-income housing tax credit that was passed a couple of years ago. The Department of Housing has been excellent stewards of that and really created a lot of affordable housing units as a result of that. At some point, in a couple of years, that credit will expire. And so we need to start laying the groundwork for that continuation and hopefully an increased investment in that state LIHTC. So I'm going to pause there, check time, because there's two other things I'd love to chat with y'all about, but I want to be sensitive.
Okay, what questions do people have? And I know you have questions, so that's why I say what questions, not does anyone have any questions or thoughts? Jim, I see your hand first.
Yes, thanks, Director Cruz. Joan, a quick question for you on the new interagency entity. I noticed that the Arizona Department of Administration is not included, and there are significant state properties, empty lots throughout the state around the Capitol Mall area that really need to be examined as an opportunity for affordable housing. I know that ADOA and has hired a consultant to look at especially the governmental mall area. It's just, so sad to see so many empty lots there that could be put to good use immediately, I would think, knock on wood. So I would encourage the ADOA to be in part of the process.
Yeah, great suggestion, Jim. Appreciate that. I will share that the intentional focus of the state agencies that were selected is because of some federal funds that actually pass through that agency as it relates to housing and homelessness. So, but that doesn't mean that that Governor Hobbs can't tap some of her other cabinet members to be a part of that conversation. So, excellent suggestion.
Other questions? Are there questions in the room or comments in the room? Okay, y'all get to ask her questions that she may not be able to answer in a month or two. So you should ask questions now before she officially is in the role.
Well, are you okay with me rolling on for a couple more minutes?
I'm okay. Yes.
Okay, there's one question in the room. I'm sorry.
I have one question for you, Jen. I don't know if you can answer this, but I never heard or saw a report that came out of that Housing Supply Committee, and I was just sort of wondering if you could comment on sort of what the status of that Housing Supply Committee was that ended in December.
Sure. Happy to share that with you. I don't know who's talking, but I'm happy to send that. Sorry,
Cook Davis from Morrison Institute.
Okay, great. Hi there. Yes, so 2 reports were actually released. One I'm looking at, actually both I'm looking at. First, the Housing Supply Study Committee final report was made available. I believe it's on the legislative website, but basically details all of the who were the presenters, the meeting minutes, et cetera, but it also shares the chairman's findings and recommendations. And I'm not going to dive too deep into that, but I will share that, that again, I think again, thanks to you all, thanks to the coalition membership, thanks to our statewide partners, Chairman Kaiser and the members of the Housing Supply Study Committee heard that we really need to focus on affordability. We need to focus on support services for folks who are experiencing homelessness, and that some of those recommendations were included, i.e. Investing in the Housing Trust Fund and really creating that interagency approach as well. There were other changes, and obviously really into the thick of it around zoning changes. That's a conversation that obviously we want to be a part of, but again, our focus is going to be a little bit myopic and really just focus on affordable housing. So happy to share that with you. It is available on the legislative website. The draft, if you're referring to the draft economic analysis, the analysis of housing availability and affordability created by the Anderson Economic Group, it was actually never, it was shared in draft form and never finalized. And I think that was because members of the study committee who commissioned that were unhappy with the results.
Don Bogart.
Good morning, everybody. Joan, I'm really encouraged to hear your comments about looking at the affordable housing for teachers. As most of you know, we work with 130 high schools, and Cindy Tercero with Phoenix Union High School District is our board president. And I can not tell you how many staff members that she is aware of, and just comments that we've heard from our youth coaches, from a lot of the school liaisons, how they're talking about they cannot afford to live in areas close to their schools. And during the holidays, we actually heard of several school liaisons who were living in their cars. So it was really just disheartening to hear that the educators that really we depend on for the support as far as taking care of the youth in school who are experiencing homelessness are experiencing the same challenges that they are. So I'm really excited to hear about this new opportunity.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I mean, we shouldn't have our first responders, our educators struggling to, well, no one should be struggling to, it doesn't matter your job title or lack of a job title. You shouldn't be struggling to make ends meet.
Mhm. Any other pieces?
Okay, for me to jump in on another thing?
I'll give you more time. Yes. Ms. Jones.
Okay. So I already kind of touched upon the Housing Supply Study Committee, so I don't really get that drum anymore, but I did share with you all the third and final thing is that the Arizona Housing Coalition is in a unique opportunity and the first of its kind for us, first role for us to play in terms of actually having dollars to distribute. It's weird. We're not used to this. But nonetheless, we put our first notice of funding opportunity out into the world, out into the community, and hopefully you all saw that. It is a funding opportunity called From Crowd to Home. I don't know if anybody has questions. I'll do my best to answer them, but I will share with you the intent of this. This is round 1 of 3. The first, the intent of this is to fund nonprofits, behavioral health care, government entities, and others working to provide safe and stable housing for those experiencing homelessness. But it's going to be focused on the shift from shelter to non-congregate care. It could allowable funding activities include bridging, operational expense, flexible housing subsidies, support of social determinants of health, but those funds may not be used for capital expenditures. My dear colleague, Jocelyn Wilkinson, is actually overseeing all this and will be overseeing all 3 rounds of funding. So she might be the best contact for you all, but I do want to make you all available of that first funding opportunity, and that there is a deadline of Tuesday, January 17th. I know, forgive us, friends. Forgive us, development directors who are probably shaking their fist at us. But again, first of 3, and happy to at least accept questions. I may not have all the answers.
Questions? We're talking about money, y'all, so I know y'all got questions. I'll start with questions. Are there questions in the room? Okay, Dawn, go ahead.
I may have shaken my fist, but I just want to say thank you, actually, because it's a new funding opportunity that none of us were anticipating. So it could definitely fill in some of the gaps right now. So we'll take a short deadline for that.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Kimberly Thompson.
Hi, Joan, do you have any idea of the other 2 rounds when a timeline?
So I'll kind of hint at the, well, I mean, I don't think I feel like it's common knowledge, but the other 2, I'll tell you the intent of that funding. The timeline is to be determined, but I would imagine some of this is going to happen after my place at the coalition. So it's up to the team at the coalition. But I think giving them some grace to get the first round at least identified, those funders, awarded, and then they'll start on the second and then third round. The second round of funding is going to be really focused on the greater part of Arizona, so not Maricopa and Pima counties. And then the third and final funding will be focused on statewide capacity. And that could look at, myriad number of things, examining policies. I see Ty's hand raised, so I'll say it also speaks to data and the importance of data in our work. So you all tell us what you think are, viable projects. There's some, loose parameters around that third and final funding. But again, it'll be let's get the first tranche. I hate that word, but first tranche out the door, second bucket, and then third bucket. Hopefully that answers the question.
Ty?
Joan, in the notice of funding availability, it said that there was the Housing Coalition had received 4.8 million overall. Is that the amount that's available for all 3 rounds, or is that for 1 round? Could you just describe what that means or what that looks like?
Yeah, no, great question, Ty. So 4.8 is available for the From Crowd to Home funding opportunity. So the first one. The second one, don't have it in front of me. I think Joanna, if I'm wrong, please let me know. I think the Greater Arizona focus second funding is, I think it's 1.8 million. And then the third statewide capacity building is about 2.5 million, maybe 2.4, 2.8, 2.5, approximately that.
Okay, thanks, Joan.
Total equating to 9 million between all three funding buckets.
Thank you.
Question, in terms of statewide capacity, does that mean projects that increase capacity across the state, or is it projects that are statewide?
It's open to across the state. It's let me just quickly read it. Some of the potential funding. The Housing Coalition will consider funding requests to strengthen individual agencies' response to addressing homelessness, including direct service, staff retention and recruitment strategies, technical assistance in applying for existing or future funding sources, data and systems, integration staffing, and strategies to ensure an equitable COVID-19 delivery of care. So again, that's kind of broad, but that's the parameters that we wanted to focus on.
No, that makes sense. Okay, any other questions? And then we're gonna have to move because
just
we went over.
real quickly. Thank you, Director Cruz. Just real quickly again, Joanne, when is that third bucket going to be available?
To be determined. It's gonna, I just want to give the coalition team time to get the first bucket out, then the second bucket, and then the third. So soon.
Would you say within 6 months?
I'd say before the fiscal year 23-24 starts.
Which would be July?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sarah Sims.
Joan, would I be an eligible applicant as a school district entity? I missed the beginning of, was it nonprofit government agency?
Yeah, no, I think you would be, but let me circle back to you, Sarah. I don't, we want to make it be kind of gap funding, new funding to fill in, unique funding, because it is a unique funding opportunity for us. So we want to.
Yeah, I have one specific ask, so we'll loop back.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, so we now have to move. Thank you so much, Joan, for that update. Thank you all for your jumping in and asking of questions. The only bad question is the one that you don't ask, because then it never gets the opportunity to be answered. Next, we'll move on to the System Flow Dashboard. Stephanie Crum, HMIS Manager at Solari, will provide a recap of the System Flow Dashboard. Stephanie, go ahead. Is Stephanie with us today?
Maybe let's circle back on this one.
Okay, we will circle back on the System Flow Dashboard. I am still looking, we are still looking for a co-chair. So if you are interested, please reach out to Haley about that. If you're interested in serving as co-chair, if you thought about it and said no, but you really should say yes, then think about that as well. You can always change your mind to say, oh, I thought about it, I said yes, and then I said no, but we really want you to say yes. Okay, things to think about. Now we'll move on to the COC Committee 2023 work. The Continuum of Care Board has requested that the co-chairs of each committee present on the work that they are currently undertaking and what they would like to work on in the next year. Similarly, so the Continuum of Care Committee has expressed an interest in setting goals and discussing the work to be done in 2023. This time will be used to both recap the work that was completed in 2022 and what this committee would like to accomplish in 2023. So the question on the floor is, first, what do you all want me to talk about? And this is the bulk of our agenda, so I need y'all to jump in. And we'll start with what you would like me to talk about in terms of what we did over the last year. and then we can move into what you want to talk about in terms of what we'd really like to do over the course of the next 12 months. I hear a voice, but I can't hear it in Zoom world. I hear that somebody's talking in the room, but their microphone's not on, so I can't hear
We
it.
were talking about the system flow dashboard. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Jim, let's start with you.
Hi, I think one item could be the formation of a subcommittee to talk about communications, improvements, and the fact that the committee has been meeting and what those recommendations are and continue to be.
Okay, definitely. That should be something we talk about. Other things you all want me to talk about? You'd like to have move forward? Okay, so I'm going to shift this. I'll come back to this. Where do you guys want to go over the course of the next 12 months? What would make this time valuable? What are the things that you really want to see done in our work over the course of the next 12 months? There are the things that we hit in terms of, like we talk about the pit count, we talk about the system slow dashboard, we talk about these various things. But there's so much more that we can do. And so what are the things that you all are really burning to see us move, so this time is valuable for you and that it's impactful for our community?
Sherelle Chancellor with the Housing Authority of Maricopa County, proxy for Jessica Cruz.
Yes.
I do apologize if I'm stepping a little bit out of my boundaries as I am new to your platform, but been in this field of work for quite some time. It's a few different pressing issues that I've definitely seen within the community as it pertains to housing and sustainability in terms of moving from unit to unit. There's been, several different reasons why individuals may need to move, and their biggest barrier, I would say, would be funding for move to move when you don't have that bulk of the deposits. If they're, and then a lot of the phone calls that we get are, how do we find assistance? So those being two big pressing issues is already being a low income family, not being able to afford the deposits for a new unit makes definitely wanting to move from one undesirable neighborhood to a more desirable one is, again, the funding source. Where are we getting these deposit amounts for the first month's rent and security deposits and all these other fees that are being charged? But in addition, how do they find that assistance? Most of them are calling us when we're a general Section 8 office asking, well, if you guys don't have it, where do I look? And I would love to, as a person that's answering the front desk phone sometimes, to get them at least one referral suggestion within the community of where to start looking other than just 211. That's something that's nationally known. Most of our residents say that's the very first place that they try is 211. But what are some other platforms that we could get out to the community so they are aware of where to look for help?
Thank you for that, Cheryl. And just so you know, I believe in dancing in our meetings, and sometimes when you dance, you step on people's toes, and that's okay because we're still gonna hit it to the beat. So you don't have to worry about those pieces in the meetings that I'm overseeing. So thank you for that. But yeah, I think that's definitely good information to think about as far as because those resources are out there right now. But people don't necessarily know where those resources are. And so we have to be able to do more, both from what Jim talked about in terms of communications, in terms of what's the real messaging, like how do we really want to talk about these issues, as well as how we communicate with community about the resources that are available so they don't have to go play hide and go seek with the resources. What are other things that you all would really like to see us tackle over the course of the next 12 months?
Nathan Smith, Phoenix Rescue Mission. I guess I have, questions that hopefully could lead to answering that question.
Yeah, that's good.
like, for instance, I don't know who is looking at some of the more important things that get talked about in our community. So my question is, who's looking at what systems gaps need to be filled and ways that they need to be filled? I know commonly talked about in conversations are, where are people falling into homelessness from? They're falling in from various points on the criminal justice continuum. They're falling out of housing interventions that they've been placed into. There are definite gaps between emergency rooms and homeless services providers. Like, for me, it's crazy when I go talk to a case manager at a hospital and they've never heard of Phoenix Rescue Mission, don't know what we do. And then they tell me stories. They're constantly discharging homeless patients. So there's all of these different points in the system that touch on homelessness. People enter into homelessness from these points. And I just don't know who in the continuum of care is looking at that. I know it's been talked about, but if that is a gap that there is not a committee already working on, that might be something that this committee could take up.
Thank you for that, Nathan. That's good. Let me go to Michelle and then Sarah. Michelle?
Yes, good morning. One of the things, of course, my platform tends to be accessibility and disability access. And I would really like to see more information available and to be able to processing, like, how do you handle disability issues? With a third of the people we serve being people who are chronically homeless, disability is a big part of that. And how do we handle that? What are the best recommendations, best practices? So, when you're dealing with folks who have disabilities, is a best practice section. When I looked at some of the proposed documents that we'll talk about today, I didn't see a whole lot in there, and I suspect it's because the federal government is also not addressing that very well as well. So I would love to see something along those lines, resources, funding for disability aspects, and what we can do. What can we do? What's available out there? There's a lot available, but I have a feeling we just don't know about it.
Okay. Thank you, Michelle. Sarah.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to put a plug in there that I hope that our work with Haley will continue on I can't come up with the name of the subcommittee. Was it the connectedness to other systems, Haley?
Yes, connecting to other systems of care. We're meeting again in February, so anybody
Thank you.
who wants to join.
And I apologize, I wasn't able to make the last one, but I think back to Nathan's point is that connectedness. How are we going to bring in those other systems? And I think that people are looking to the continuum of care to start building those bridges and making those connections so that discharge at hospital is not familiar with Phoenix Rescue Mission. So I just would like to, I hope that subcommittee can continue.
Thank you. Other thoughts around, so like this is all really good stuff around like the things that like where we'd like to go over the course of the next year. Other pieces, there's a lot of you here. And what I really hope is that this is not a meeting where we just come to look at each other or to come play Hollywood Squares. For those of you that are old enough to remember that show, we don't want to play Hollywood Squares for homelessness where we're just here. So what is it that you need from this space to make this valuable time and to make it impactful for the communities that you serve?
Chair Cruz, this is Vanessa Carthel with ABC Housing.
Yes, Vanessa.
I know we've talked recently about the strategic plan, and so I was just wondering, it almost feels like we're making a smaller strategic plan for the year. And how are we aligning with that? How are we aligning with the gaps that we're identifying? What are our priorities? And I think we're throwing out ideas right now, and that's great. I also I know we did our data walk and we had some, glaring gaps there. And I wonder if we can look back at those notes pick out some of those themes and set priorities for the year. Yeah, I think that I would like to go about like a method like that, if that makes sense.
That definitely does. Haley, do you have that information available?
The notes from the data walk?
Well, like also what are the current priorities that were in the strategic plan as they had it? Like
Yes.
where are we at in alignment with that?
Yeah, so I do have that information. I know that part of you presenting, all of the chairs for all of the committees presenting is sort of seeing how the work was done for the last strategic plan to help either continue the work in this next year or change things up. So I can share that information to you. I don't know how valuable it will be at this time since they're just going to change it, or they may change it as after that meeting happens next week. So definitely we can keep you updated on what comes out of that meeting. And then if that will help guide the work that you'll do. I also want to remind you that like the board sets their priorities and then kind of assigns down. But they definitely want to keep in mind the things that you want to work on. So that's sort of what the intention is for this next meeting, is to obviously to be respectful of your time and passions, but also to make sure that we're continuing to move the work forward. So I think that's just something to keep in mind as well. But for example, like our connecting to other systems of care, that was something that the committee expressed interest in and the board was also interested in doing. So that's how it got assigned down to you all. And now it's just moving that work forward. So I don't know if that answered your question, but.
Can I just clarify? Because I agree with Vanessa that it's really important for this group to be aligned, as you're saying, with the priorities of the board so that we're all in sync together. So are you saying then there's an upcoming meeting where the board is going to assign priorities to a bunch of committees, including this one?
Yes, yeah. So they already had their strategic planning meeting. I think they had like their first meeting for that, and then realized like, wow, it turns out we don't really know what people are doing, which is definitely problematic. So now this big meeting where they have all of the committees come in and sort of share what they've been working on will give the board a better idea of like, okay, here's all the work that has actually been done. This is great. How do we keep moving forward? So I don't anticipate it'll be like a total change from what we have. It'll just be like sort of step 2 in that, or phase 2 rather. But yeah, so I can share with you, I think you guys should have access to it, but I can definitely share with you what the strategic plan looks like now. I will say it's a little intense looking. There's like a lot of information in there, but just to give you an idea of like what it looks like, what their priorities were before, and how that will maybe change or just adjust for the future.
I also want to say that I believe we can make the connections around what we want to do, right? Along the lines of like where they've assigned priorities, that it's, you know, it's up to us to be able to really define what the work looks like. And I think that it's important, as we're the ones that are really close to the work, to be able to define define and inform what that could look like. In addition to that, when, you know, I think about, you know, when I was at the National Alliance for Ending Homelessness conference over the summer, it was the COC committees that were really pushing in cities that had made impact. It was at the committee level where folks were really pushing in certain ways. And so I think that it's really important for us to really be able to define this is where we want the work to go. And then like we can always find ways to make those connections to those priorities, because as those folks have been assigned to lead from the board space, they shouldn't be too far off the range in terms of what it is that we're talking about doing. But there are some things that we have to decide for ourselves to say, this is what we want to do with those directives. So by all means, yes, we need to be in alignment, but also we need to be able to push. And, you know, I want to be able to, in this year, have a much more vocal presence in the meetings, because they give us the opportunity as chair or eventually co-chair to present at that meeting and at that space. And so as you all know, at least from my perspective, like I said, I don't mind stepping on toes as we dance, because we have to be able to, like, the alternative is that our people die, right? And so we can't let people die because of political correctness. We have to be able to do the work. Jim, go ahead.
Hi, I was just thinking with Joan Service as the incoming director and Joanna coming into her new role, that maybe, and I don't know if it's a part of the strategic plan, but in order to be more influential, quote unquote, this group, excellent representation of different organizations and different skill levels and doing great things, but there may be a place for such individuals to be on these new boards or commissions that the incoming director is pulling together to up the level of influence of what we all stand for. I know it could be an extra job, an extra commitment of time and effort, but I mean, to get some things done, sometimes we do need to step up in those roles.
Definitely. Other pieces where you would like to see us go? Questions that you have about where we can go?
Yeah, I have just another one. So I'm just trying to, as much as possible, this is my second meeting, so I'm trying to gather as much information as possible, as quickly as possible. And one of the things that I found, I know there's this connection between the Pathways Home Plan and the board strategic plan. And the Pathways Home Plan lists the committee as a partner on the improve access to data section, which I wonder, what was that supposed to mean? Did the committee do anything as a partner in that action item? And is there room moving forward for the committee to play a role on improving access to data? So that's kind of a question that may or may not turn into something that we can set as a strategic priority for us. So again, the question is, did we do anything with the access to data?
So we did do a data walk this year. I mean, last year. I'd like to see us do that with greater regularity, as well as digging a little bit deeper in regards to what we presented, so things get more micro within that, so people have a different way to interact and engage with the data. So I would say yes and to that, Nathan, because I think that that's something we can do with greater regularity, or even if it was on a quarterly basis, to when we look at, I was thinking that around last month when we were going through the system performance measures and thinking through how could we present this actually differently and in ways that people can actually interact and engage with the data. So it's not just a presentation, but it's an experience that helps inform the work at a very different level, as well as increases the number of people that come into our meeting in that space, at least, for those 4 times a year. But definitely, I think that that's something that we should continue to do work on when it comes to not just looking at the numbers. And this was actually part of what spawned this conversation, was to say, is there a different way that you all want us to look at the data, so that when we do the system performance, even the system flow dashboard, is there a different kind of deep dive that you want people to do, or that is there even a schedule that you'd like to be able to create to say, we're going to highlight these things each month, by month, and so that we're doing deep dives that also still inform the work, because the key is always to inform the work, not just to look at numbers to say ooh ah about those numbers, but to really have something that we're able to do actionably with them. So that's good, Nathan. So hopefully that answers your question some, as well as gives us some direction around where we could go.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. That data walk sounds like a very intriguing thing. So,
yeah, we can talk more about that too. Michelle, I see you raise your hand.
Yes, to follow up on Jeremy and Andrew, I've asked a couple of times during the meeting when we talked about data to split out some of the disability data. Again, our largest group that's being underserved is chronic homelessness. And a big chunk of that is people with disabilities. Without seeing some of that disability data, and I understand, some of the concerns about it that are self-reported, et cetera, it really doesn't give us a lot of information. And so, I don't know how many people need the services, specific disability services, to help them become sustainable. So having some way to break that data out would be very helpful for those of us who deal with the disability side of things. The other thing is that I know the federal, I've looked at this from several angles, and the feds don't require it to be broken down. And I think we can do better than this, than just the minimal federal regulation. That information would be very helpful to the disability systems. When we're talking about the different silos of, different ways of dealing with, the committee that I haven't been able to attend because it conflicts with another meeting, where we're talking about different systems to add in. There's a whole huge disability system that I feel isn't being included because they don't know how to get in. Okay, they don't know how to connect. And there's a lot of resources there, but until we connect that together, it's not going to go very far. But the data will help connect it. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Yeah, I'm hearing themes. Thank you, Michelle. I'm hearing themes that exist around both access and distribution of information, as well as like what will best inform our work, and how we can inform those working across the system, and give them tools that are necessary to be able to really target their interventions. So I think I definitely hear some consistent themes around that. Is there anything else that people would like for me to bring up in the space or talk about?
Vanessa Carthel, ABC.
Vanessa.
I think this is a great space where we have a lot, like you said earlier, there's a lot of different people from different organizations, and I have found that some of the greatest innovations that have been the most effective are partnerships. And so I think we can really be a space where we can encourage partnerships, where we can kind of brainstorm together and try to have that creative thinking when we identify issues. So I think that's something we should always look for in the next year as we identify system gaps, data concerns, that we're saying, okay, what are some partnerships that we can either have within our space here, or can we invite someone to come talk, or something like that, really have more of that collaborative approach in the upcoming year. And I think we should get to know each other.
Yes.
I don't know if maybe at the next meeting or the meeting after we have some new members on the committee. And what if after one of our committee meetings, we just had lunch together in person and got to know each other? I think that would help with conversations, help people feel more comfortable speaking up, and really utilize everyone's expertise a little bit better. So yeah, thank you.
Haley, question. Is it that we can't, okay, so in terms of meeting law, how does that work? And is it a thing where, like, school board members, for example, you can't meet with a certain number of school boards because then you have quorum and they have to announce it per meeting law? And so then, like, if we did a series of sub meetings that existed after that point, like after the meeting, they weren't actual meetings because we didn't have quorum in those meetings. And so as long as we didn't have that, we had freedom to do what we wanted to do? Or what's the legality component of it? Because I agree with Vanessa.
Yeah, I'll have to do a little research on that for you, but I'm happy to follow up. I think it's like anything that could be I think the concern is like making like quote unquote like backdoor deals, right? Like you
Right.
wouldn't really be able to talk about business while you're there or make any plans necessarily around the committee. I'm not sure, like, obviously this committee is different than like a city council, right? I think there may be like different legal ramifications for both, but I can definitely get some more information on what pertains to open meeting law for you all and sort of figure it out from there. I also
Yeah.
want to mention the board has made the decision to each quarter have one meeting that's only in person. There's no Zoom available at all. And that was their way of like making sure they all get in the room at least once a quarter to see each other and like bump elbows and network, whatever. So if that is something you all are interested in, that's definitely something we can do too. But just obviously that's up to all of you guys and you would all need to make that decision together. But just wanted to say that that's an option for you too, if you wanted to do something that was just completely in person and there was no hybrid option for that one meeting per quarter.
Haley, would that have to come to a vote or would that be a decision?
I don't know that it has to be voted on necessarily. That I think that could just be like a less formal decision, but I would have to go back and see how the board did that.
Okay.
We can definitely talk
So-
about it next month.
Yeah, like let's put that in and like let's have that discussion. Because I'm interested in all of those things. I also would like to know like what we can do and what we can't do in that regard, because what we can't do helps me inform how we still do it. But legally, because I want to keep everybody above board. So yeah, sometimes it just helps me to know like where the barbed wire fences are. So I know like what I can pass or where I need to throw a blanket over it. Jim.
Speaking of getting back to the idea of partnerships and getting involved, and I was just reminded that many of our communities are now going through what's called a general plan update. And I don't have the schedule of who's what year, but I'm wondering, hoping, thinking that we should, and representatives on this group and the full board should be somehow a part of that process. For example, with any of the communities, especially Phoenix, because of its size, to ensure that affordable housing, homelessness, discussions and thoughts and ideas are a part of that process, and that our voices are heard there too.
I agree with that. So like, Jim, that's like assessing where there's opportunities to expand impact and influence that go beyond the walls of this room or this virtual room. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, that's what you're hearing.
Yeah, I like that. I like that as well.
And I can get you the list of folks who are on the Phoenix General Plan Update organization. And I'm betting some of the names are familiar to all of you, or some of you.
Thank you, Jim. I can take a couple more comments and questions and thoughts around this before we have to move. We actually kind of don't have to move because the update's not there. Still, okay. So what I'd like to say is thank you all for your input. I very much appreciate it. It's useful. Again, I believe the work that we all do is super important and valuable. And so your time is also super important and valuable. And what I never want for this meeting to be, especially while I'm the chair or co-chair, is just a space that we come to and see each other. We can do that at happy hour. But like, this is really a time that we have the opportunity to press forward. I do like the idea, but I want to find out exactly how they did it around like a mandatory, not mandatory, but like, having at least a meeting a quarter that is all in person. Daniel Pink talked about in doing investment in the city of Las Vegas, because he said the difference between the East and the West Coast is that on the East Coast, everybody's on top of each other. And with them all being on top of each other, it creates collision. And through collision, you have synergy. And so that's why you have a lot of innovations that come out of like the Atlantic Seaboard, because all of these people are having constant collision and thus creating new things. And I think that, on the West Coast, since we're spread out in particular, you don't have that always happen in the same way. Furthermore, in this post-pandemic reality, our squares and have nice, neat borders around them. And so, the way collision happens in this space and synergy is very different. And so we don't have that same opportunity when we're here. And because I've done it too, so I'm not just talking about other people. When we're on Zoom, we Zoom cheat. We're a bunch of Zoom cheaters, right? And everybody doing everything else. So, but when we're in person, it calls us to have to tackle the issue that's in the room. We can't just be like semi paying attention to it while I'm also juggling like 4 other things and maybe in 3 other meetings at the same time. No shade to anybody, because I said I've done it and sometimes do it too. But I think that we are in a crisis of epic proportions. And I don't have the number for the transient death list for the end of the year, but I'll be sure to say it at the next meeting in terms of where we landed at. Like, we can't afford to be at a number that's like 1,500, 2,000 next year. Like, that can't be the case when it comes to how many people passed away while experiencing homelessness. And so we've got to move in a way that meets the epic nature of the crisis. Okay. Soapbox down. Let me step off of that. My apologies, you all. I'm going to come back to the systems flow dashboard. So I'll come back to that. And so with the systems flow dashboard, I know it has not been updated since last month, but if you could go over some of that information, and in this way we can, for those eyes that weren't in the room last month, they can see it for this month. They can see it now. And if there's any new questions that arise as a result of that, we can ask those questions. Haley, I know you had sent me the communication saying who was taking that on. Cleo. So Cleo's going to give us an update. Cleo, can you give us the systems flow dashboard update?
Yes, I can. Thank you, everyone. I also realized, maybe Ty, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but we might not have the December numbers until later this month. So this will be the November update. Cannot recall if you all saw this in your last meeting or not, but we will go over it anyway. So I will share my screen with you. All right, there we go. Okay, so I am not Stephanie, so I will not have all of the fancy details for you all, but it'll be a good place for us to start. Here is the publicly available dashboard that you can get at any point. Here on our first page, we see some definitions, and whether this is your 15th time coming here or your first, these definitions are super useful. I refer back to them literally constantly. So definitely take a look at those to make sure you're understanding everything correctly. At our active overview, you can see here that we are continuing to see this leveling out trend here. Very, very small dips in numbers. This is our number of total active households. On the top, all households. If you hover over it, you get the breakout of individuals. The singles line in red, and then we have our families down at the bottom. Definitely important here to hover over to get those numbers because the line is much less stark than our singles line. However, the numbers still do change quite drastically over time. Below that, we have the active households broken out in subpopulations. So a lot of these are mimicking that general leveling out, nothing too drastic. However, we are seeing increases in our chronic numbers as well as elderly. This doesn't look like it moved up a ton since the last number update. However, we are very close to hitting the high that we experienced in June. So definitely still experiencing these record numbers, still drastically higher than we were this time last year. And you get some more definitions under there of what defines each of those subpopulations. Moving on to our flow details. Here you have just the active heads of households trend line again. And then here is our inflow and outflow numbers. Our inflow continues to outpace our outflow, so not ideal, but if we go down here, we can see that it's largely driven by, or we would think anyways, that it's driven by this drop in total housed numbers. So that did drop by about 100 households this month, well, for the month of November. I would say, like I said, I'm not Stephanie, but I would say that's a pretty significant drop in our total housed. And then we have this increase in unknown or negative exits here as well. And then this middle chart will give you just more details on who specifically is part of that inflow. So we've got return from inactive increasing just a touch. We have new clients continuing to go down. And then here we see return from housing up a little bit as well. So that is the current system flow dashboard. If anyone has questions at this time, I can try my best to address them.
This is Ty Rosensteel with Solari. Thanks so much for jumping in to do this presentation for us. I just wanted to add that you were spot on right that the numbers update for the previous month on the 15th. So we'll have December numbers populated on this system flow dashboard on the 15th, might be the 16th this month just because it falls on the weekend, but it will get updated early next week.
Thank you, Ty.
Questions? First, actually, you know what? Let me say, I want to ask a different question as opposed to do you have questions? What's people's first reaction to when they see this?
How can we be more impactful to this?
Okay, thank you.
It doesn't look good.
Thank you, Michelle. Other first reactions?
My first reaction was it would be really good when the data analytics work group and the data subcommittee have processed through the data and determined their trend findings to get for this committee to get it.
I like that. I like that. Did you capture that, Haley?
Yes, we got it. Thank you.
Okay, good. Yeah. Other reactions when you've seen the data.
Chairperson Cruz.
Yes, Sarah.
This is Sarah Sims. I've said this before, but I'm just going to say it again. It's just heartbreaking to me to think about how many families are experiencing homelessness but are nowhere captured in this. There are so many families out there that are not getting to points of entry and are not represented in this count anywhere. And we see that at the schools every single day. And to echo Don's point, we're also seeing that with our staff people, our hourly employees, and some of our teachers.
Yeah, so so a thought that I have off of this, and then I'll go to Dawn, is that I wonder if that's how other cities slid into what I consider like functional homelessness, where these folks are doing where people are they're existing in the world in a way that we think, like they're around the table right now, for example, but they're living in their car or they're staying in the parking garages and showering, in the buildings in secret, right? And where that was happening and increasing in greater increasing numbers, but we were missing it because the way the system was set up, it wasn't set up to catch those folks that are existing in plain sight, right?
Absolutely. Hotels, the amount
yeah.
of families that are
Well,
going
yes.
for long-term solutions in hotels it's really hard to wrap your head around unless you're seeing it every single day.
And like that would even be a question that I'd have for those, and Michelle's in the room, so she can speak to it. But when it comes to those, like when it comes to the pit count, like how are we capturing those folks, right? And we know they exist. So then like, what are we going to do or what are you all planning to do to actually capture these people that we know are there, but we don't count them because the system isn't built to count them, right? Like how do we do the pit count better?
We did attempt to do the pit count better a number of years ago. We did do an unsheltered count through the homeless liaisons. It wasn't timely, it wasn't laid out quickly enough with liaisons, and it wasn't executed well. I think we can do it better. It was literally just an asterisk in the point in time count of, hey, we just want to make sure somebody at the Fed level understands that educationally the definition of homelessness is different, but this is how many children in Arizona we knew were unsheltered on that date. There's a new liaison at the Department of Education, if that's something we'd like to talk about. I know it's now way too late to do that for this January, but I would love to see that be a mission that we ask of homeless liaisons, is tell us what your unsheltered count is. And so that we can add that, even if it is not a required piece of data in that point in time count, at least we as a state are acknowledging that. And
I would also say that, so for example, Human Services Campus in March of last year, we did our own pit count. We did our own count modeled after the pit count for the areas surrounding the campus. We do a weekly count as well, to be able to keep track of what's happening directly around the campus. But I think like being able to do things of that nature in a more regular basis, right? To be able to say, like, for example, if we wanted to do that around education, then we as a committee say that that's something we want to be able to do as from an education standpoint, so that we know who these folks are. And it doesn't have to just be around the pit count. Like, yes, we have a certain labor for a volunteer force when it comes to the pit count. But like, if we wanted to do a survey or a census of a different kind, like how could we do that? And we don't have to wait in January now for next January for that to be able to get done. We just have to figure out how we want to do it. Because similar to how we get everybody together to do the pit count, we can also say from our convening space, we want to get everybody together. We want to build energy around, knowing what does this look like in this particular area or this particular city or whatnot, like, or across the county. Like we can do that. We have the ability to do that with the folks that are around the table. So thank you for that, Sarah. Dawn.
Yeah, that's the beauty of this. And Sarah, thank you so much for bringing it forward. Arizona Department of Education can give you those numbers daily. The report that we pulled for some of our grant opportunities back in May of 2022, just in 9th through 12th grade, there were 8,700 youth throughout Arizona, and 1,100 of them were unaccompanied. I think the main thing is that HUD does not recognize those families because, as Sarah said, a lot of them are in those short-term hotel rentals. I mean, I can tell you in the Tolleson district, there's probably 3 hotels that have hundreds of families there, and we're talking 5, 6, 7 people in a 1-bedroom, and they have to go week to week. You have a huge scatter around the Metro Center area, but also a lot of those 1,100 unaccompanied youth are couch surfing, and HUD does not recognize that. But I can tell you that they're not just going from on one person's couch. They literally are going between 3 and 5 different places. So any given week, they could be displaced 3 to 5 times. So what does that say in the HUD definition? If you're displaced that many times, that's a chronic homelessness. Just because they might have somebody or somewhere to go doesn't necessarily mean it's an absolute. So the great news is you don't need additional resources to get that number. Sylvia Chavez used to be on, and I think she's still officially on the committee. And that's one of the main reasons we advocated for her joining, was because she represented the Department of Education and represented these additional numbers.
Thank you for that, Dawn. That's good. Cleo.
I just wanted to put in a quick pitch for the data committee's goals for 2023, which include a larger effort around how it is we capture all of this data that's not included in the by name list, and how do we better represent what is actually happening in our system. So this is something that the data committee definitely has an intent to follow up on at this point. It's great to hear that the committee is also thinking in this line, and hopefully it's something we can all work together to figure out how best to get communicated and gather.
Yes, teamwork makes the dream work, and we don't need to duplicate efforts, but we need to make sure it gets done. So, this is all really good information for things and ways that we can hopefully intersect with these other committees and how they can inform us and we can inform them to be able to have cross collaboration. And many of you are on those other committees as well. So, we can utilize that again when we talk about other opportunities to increase influence and impact. Are there any other thoughts around the systems flow dashboard?
No other thoughts, but I just wanted to mention these are such great ideas that maybe you could bring to the board for the strategic conversation that you guys are going to have.
I was thinking the same thing. So I was going to say, yes, we need to make sure that put that stuff together for me. So I have it in my presentation packet when I go to the COC board.
Is that a board meeting?
It is a meeting that is next Friday, so it's more of like an ad
okay.
hoc meeting than their formal board meeting, just because it's so like they always have a lot of business, so they can't always like have this more robust conversation. But it is open, so anybody who wants to attend is welcome to. It'll just be the chairs that are presenting.
Well, what time is it?
I believe it is at 11, but give me 1 second to check. It is, yes, it's at 11 to 12:30, and I can send you that information if you're interested.
That'd be great.
So yeah, if you can send me an email and remind me if you're interested in attending, I can send you that information. Perfect. Yes, I could do that.
This is Vanessa at BBC. I just asked if she could send it to the whole committee.
And I absolutely will.
Thank you.
Then, sorry, I keep forgetting to say who I
Keep
am.
going.
Smith, Phoenix Res Commission. Last thought though, just tying some things together and then thinking about next week or the next meeting. One of the things is I would love to also, I couldn't find it on the MAG website, but whenever that care coordination group, what'd you call it, Haley?
Connecting to other systems of care work group.
Yeah, that
Really rolls off the tongue.
Yeah. So I'll ask you to tell me what that was every time. And I would love to know what the date of that was. I think that we should probably consider leaning into that, because when you look at the board strategic plan, there are a couple of places where that is specifically called out for this committee. So clearly that's what we're supposed to be doing. Like increasing connection to other systems of care, including higher level of care, as addressing the return to homelessness performance measure, and then developing an education process for other systems of care to educate the homeless system under the length of time homeless system performance measures. So, I mean, I think it's important for us to lean in on that. I'd love to know more about the group. Maybe that group, I don't know if they have been, again, I'm super new. So if I'm saying things that you guys are already talking about, forgive me, but I would love to hear from that group presenting to us so that we can pay attention to the progress on that action item. So yeah, that's all. I just think that the course is kind of set a little bit. If the board leans into that, then our course will be set again in part for 2023. So yeah, it'd be good to know more about that.
Agreed. Michelle.
Yes, I saw the cargo part that you guys did on that committee, and it blew my mind. I also would like, I think I submitted some ideas. Again, I wasn't able to attend because I have conflicting meetings, but I would love to see that presented. It was very informative.
Yes, Michelle, thank you for that. We did go over it. It is a hefty document, and I did receive your comments. I think after taking a look at that, we are going a little bit in a different direction for our February meeting, but I will definitely present on the information that we pull together at either our February or March meeting, depending on when that other meeting happens. So I will definitely keep you guys all updated on the work that is being done in that group. It's definitely in its infancy though. So again, if you haven't joined before and you would like to, please feel free.
Okay, awesome. So now, do committee members have any action or discussion items for future meetings? We kind of are naturally flowing into this as well, but are there anything that people would like to make sure that we're discussing on future meetings or putting on future agendas? And there were a number of pieces that we did talk about in today's meeting that will hopefully come up in even next month's meeting.
Vanessa, ABC, I think I would like to invite a homeless liaison to come present and let us know what they find in their work. What are the barriers that they're seeing? I would love to get that information.
Vanessa, just a clarifying question, the education homeless liaison?
Yes.
I'm here. I'm glad to speak to that anytime you'd like to hear it. Put me on the agenda.
Awesome, we will make note of that. Other things that any members have for any future discussion or action? Okay.
So I have one, sorry, Nathan's being stressed.
Yes.
Along the same lines, representatives from other systems that can come speak to homelessness from their perspective. Maybe we're missing them in counts. So again, education's a good one, hospital systems are a good one, criminal justice system's a good one. So yeah, just presentations from people like that about their experiences and seeing the gaps from their perspective would be nice.
Yeah, I think there's a real opportunity, Nate, to be able to build the bridges, right? And help to, are there points of distribution that can bring us information, but that we can also then pour into that can distribute that information out to better connect us, right? And I know, yes, we have the connections to the super committee thing. Yeah, I know we've got that committee that's doing work on that, but I think to be able to actually bring that into the space and what does that look like to mainstream that information becomes just hugely vital. So I'd like to echo that. Okay, if nothing else, for this next agenda item, comments from the committee, is there anyone on the committee that has any other announcements or events that they'd like to highlight?
I would just like to say a quick reminder, I know we already talked about it, but pit count is coming up. So if you're interested in getting involved, if for some reason you're not, please reach out to Michelle and she'll point you in the right direction. And thank you in advance for all of your work on that. We really appreciate all of you guys.
Thank you. I will say that the Human Services Campus, as a part of some of the disbursements that Governor Ducey did before he left office, he invested $10 million in the Human Services Campus for solutions across Maricopa County. So if there are folks that are looking to do something innovative to address unsheltered homelessness across the county and you'd like to partner in that regard, we have some resources. And so we're looking to be able to do some of that work. So either reach out to myself or to Amy Schwabenlander so that we can do this thing that we talk about when we talk about ending homelessness, not just aiding those that are existing in homelessness, So yeah, just want to put that out there to reach out to folks and let's talk. If there are no other comments, then Happy New Year, everybody. And this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.